Welcome to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the world of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, and the rest of the team at Lucasfilm, again, we're still deciding about Favreau, have dreamed up over the past 40 years. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the one and only Dan Z, and I are recording this on Wednesday, October 14th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, we are, 6 days away from your book going on sale?
6 days away from the release of the Star Wars book, written by myself, Pablo Hidalgo, and Cole Horton. Very, very exciting. I've got one in my hands now. It was pretty surreal. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you've obviously been doing this for a lot longer than me, but to actually hold your first book in your hands is pretty special. So I'm excited. And I thank you for all the positive vibes you've been sending out.
That's what I'm here for. But on the other hand, can we talk a minute about your official author photo?
Sure.
I mean, wow. Is there a hunkizer setting? Because I've seen you, Dan, in person, and that looks like your 1960s soft rock album cover.
So you want me to sign the picture? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, no, can you talk a little bit about when it was shot, where it was shot? Because again, it's a great photo, but and I mean this in the kindest possible ways, but again, we turned the good looks knob up a couple of ranks there. How did we do this?
I've aged well.
Well, okay.
It was.
I sadly cannot say that. I'm this far away from hiding under bridges and frightening trolls.
That was actually taken outside of our house. We live on about 4.5 acres. 3.5 of those acres are woodland, but it was taken at our house, and there's no tricks. That's just me. It was taken a few months ago.
Okay, and was this with our COVID beard, or
that was just hey, I'm gonna get a picture in a little bit. My wife thinks I look good with a 5 o'clock shadow, so that's what I went with.
Okay, well, good. That's it. Your wife is not incorrect. I mean, again, it's a great picture, but again, it's just sort of like, wow. I mean, just Dan's going to start signing 8x10s. This looks great. All right. Well, and perhaps Disney with their reorg of their massive media empire will find you a new home as a cinema star. Speaking of which, now, did you see the announcement this week about the reorg?
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff. A lot of working gears and a lot of controversial stuff going on. So let's buckle in for this.
Well, all right. For those of you who didn't hear, basically the Walt Disney Company just this past week unveiled a major what they call streamlining of their media and entertainment businesses. And under this new structure, Disney's primary focus as a company is going to be developing and producing original content for the company's streaming services, as well as its legacy platforms. And are you familiar with the term legacy platform, Dan?
It's relatively new to me.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. It's like, in this case, legacy platform means movies that are shown in theaters and series that air on terrestrial television. So, and to be completely blunt here, a lot of this decision was made on the success of Disney Plus, which just launched a year ago next month on November 12th, right? 2009.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right. Disney's original plan or hope for its subscription streaming service was they would have 100 million subscribers in 5 years' time. And Dan, as of August of this year, they already have 60.5 million.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's really kind of stunning. It caught a lot of people at the studio, off guard. And speaking of the studio, this is going forward. Disney now is a company that's in the content creation business. They're breaking it down into 3 different groups. There's going to be the studios, which is going to be headed by the current studio heads, Alan Horn and Alan Bergman. There's going to be general entertainment. That's really more of the TV side of things. That's going to be headed by Peter Rice. He's a Fox vet that came over. And finally, sports. So we're talking ESPN there. That's going to be run by Jimmy Petro, who's an ESPN vet. And as for the two Allens, they're now going to be, their new job titles are chairman of studio content. And they're going to be creating branded theatrical movies and then episodic content, the limited series like The Mandalorian. And in turn, all of the various divisions of the company on the studio side, we're talking Walt Disney Pictures, we're talking Walt Disney Animation Studios, Pixar Animation Studios, Marvel Studios, and of course Lucasfilm, 20th Century Studios, and finally Searchlight. And they're all now going to be tasked with creating branded theatrical films, as well as again this episodic content, these limited series for Disney Plus. And the interesting thing is when you talk with anybody at Disney, Dan, they all point to The Mandalorian as to why. I mean, that evidently this was in the works. They were talking about doing it 2 and 3 years down the line. But the combination of COVID and what it did to Disney's business model, and the fact that The Mandalorian it basically became this once in a generation phenomenon. In fact, somebody was explaining to me that they actually have started pulling out old Davy Crockett numbers, Dan. And what's weird is The Mandalorian is starting to shape up to be a Davy Crockett type global phenomenon.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the thing that on the basis of how well Mandalorian did, this is what Disney's takeaway was, that in this new realm, this new business model, you don't have to create a film that that gets a huge general audience. It's possible, that the Disney Plus is basically this piece of straight pipe to a specific fandom. And that, all you have to do, to be a success is to target a relatively small but extremely loyal audience that then begins to talk up your show and then brings the general audience in. And that's what they honestly believe happened with The Mandalorian. It was, I mean, face it, there's a huge Star Wars audience, but the fact that the Star Wars audience then, after they saw the first couple of episodes of The Mandalorian, began to evangelize for the show and turn to friends and family and go, you have to watch this. That's what turned it into the success that it is today. By the way, on the heels of your recommendation of the Mandalorian cereal,
Yes.
I was in Target the other day, and finally they had it in stock. And I'm a diabetic. I should not buy, breakfast cereal. But I have to ask, on your box of the Mandalorian cereal, was there a painting on the other side?
Yes, of the child.
Yeah. Now, did it have a number on the bottom? Because that's the thing. When I picked the thing up, and it's like, I'm not going to get this, and I turned it over, and here's this amazing painting of the child and Mando, and then this little what is the name of the thing they wrote on, the lizard creature with the blunt head?
Oh yes, yes. I knew it until you said that. I'll think of it. I'll think of it.
Okay, but they literally have
blurg.
One of those.
It's
on
a
the
blurg.
Back.
I knew I'd think of it.
Blurg. They have a blurg, a red blurg on the back with the number 22 on it. And it was one of these things where I'm looking at this and it's like, okay, is this the 22nd painting, or did I get the lucky 22nd box? Or
I'll have to check mine to see what the number is, and it's blurg, BLURG.
There we go. But yeah, I mean, I loved the painting so much. I had the ring at home. And speaking of which, have you seen the from Titan, the Mandalorian, the art and the imagery book, volume 1 that just came out?
I have not seen it. I know that it's available, but I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's really, I mean, I hate to say it, I bought it thinking it was the really for real Mandalorian art of, coffee table book, and it turns out that's not coming out till December. Now, this thing put together by Titan, it's 1999. It has a lot of great art, particularly those wonderful paintings you'd see at the ends of the episodes. It's got great stuff, but it's really heavy on artwork and very light on text. So
So it's more like just sort of like just a bunch of graphics or illustrations,
yeah,
but not actually
yeah,
like behind the scenes like the ones that Phil Sostak does and the people from
no,
ILM.
that's it exactly. But I have to say there is a volume 2 coming out in December that's supposed to have the artwork for season 2 of The Mandalorian. And this was good enough that I cracked. I've already pre-ordered that, and then I made sure to order my actual copy of the art of The Mandalorian, which, as you mentioned, Phil's doing. Anyway, to get back to how
the reorg.
The reorg's gonna, and the interesting thing is, if we'd been paying attention, Kathleen Kennedy was actually talking about this as far back as August. She did an interview where she was, she was talking about how she was looking forward to Disney Plus being the new home for Star Wars. She talked up the beauty of these limited series rather than the theatrical release film. Because it then gave the creative team the ability to do very character-driven stuff, to do extended storytelling and connected storytelling, and that this space offers us a great opportunity to do that. And boy, they aren't kidding. I mean, I know we talked on the last show about how the Obi-Wan series is going to begin production in March of next year over in the UK. But did you see the news this week about the Cassian Andor series?
I did not.
What's interesting is that you can find these things out in weird places like the trades, where it's not necessarily where fandom traditionally looks for this info, but they were announcing for the folks who were the grips, the union players who are looking for work, that starting on November 4th, they're going to start shooting. And I guess the tentative title for the show is Star Wars Andor. That evidently that title may change.
I hope so. That's pretty vague. Yeah, it's not like he's a household name. Like you could get away with Star Wars Skywalker or Star Wars Solo, but Star Wars Andor, I feel like that's a little too in the weeds.
Okay, remember this is Dan Z who said this. The professional, model. Okay, let's see. Other thing, what's interesting about these announcements in the trade is that the folks that they were, the job announcements they were making weren't necessarily to actually work on the limited series, Dan, but they were to work on the series that's chronicling the series.
How meta.
Well, but face it, given how popular Disney Gallery The Mandalorian turned out to be, that seems to be the plan going forward now, that each of these series will have, and again, I don't know as we'll be getting another 8-episode version like we did with The Mandalorian. But the idea is that each of these shows will have a shadow crew that will document the production of the show, and then they'll use that material to create a docu-series that will help support the show, and keep the fan base entertained and involved.
Well, and that's something that George has been doing from the beginning, where he just He documents everything, takes a lot of photographs. He
Mhm.
writes in journals. He hires people to kind of follow the process along. Originally, it wasn't for Blu-ray and DVD, but of course, that was the case since Disney purchased the company, and of course, the great success that they've had behind the scenes of The Mandalorian. So I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of things to look forward to in that, and certainly not unprecedented.
Well, but that said, what's kind of interesting is, face it, we know we've got, we're just 2 weeks out now from, getting to see season 2 of The Mandalorian. We've got Star Wars Andor, shooting in November. We've got Star Wars Obi-Wan, the limited series shooting in March. Um, where this gets interesting is how this impacts the Star Wars theatrical releases, which
Hmm.
remember, you know, that film was still it was originally supposed to go out in December 16th, 2022. Um, and look, you've been paying attention. You've seen what COVID said. I mean, just what was it? Just last week we saw Jurassic World Dominion, the next installment of that film franchise, pushed from 2021 to 2022. Given that Avatar 2, which again was supposed to come out in December uh, 2021, has now been pushed to December of 2022. That means the next Star Wars theatrical film has been pushed all the way out to December of 2023.
That's right.
So we are 38 months away from that.
And in my opinion,
Um,
that is also what helped to sort of force into Lightspeed this notion of, hey, we're not going to focus on theatrical stuff. And like you had mentioned earlier, yes, COVID is probably 75% of this, but also the success of the Mandalorian. And the Mandalorian, and someone pointed this out to me recently, is the only
mhm.
Star Wars thing that's come out since Rogue One that hasn't been polarizing. Everyone seems to legitimately enjoy it. So you may as well focus on that avenue, and let's hope we can continue to get lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's face it, a lot depends on how people perceive season two. Um, like pressure, lots of pressure. And speaking of fairly pressurized situations, Indiana Jones 5, and I called friends at Disney to confirm this, still supposed to be out in theaters July of 2022.
Wow, I
Um,
sure hope so, because he's going to be what, 80 at
yeah,
that point?
he turns 80 2 weeks before that release date.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, it's one of these situations where James Mangold evidently still doesn't have a script he likes. He's also concerned. The interesting thing, a lot of the folks uh, are following what's going on with Jurassic World Dominion and the fact that they had to shut down production again for 2 weeks because they had a COVID case on the set. And and I'm told, it's Harrison's age being 80 is a real concern, given the COVID situation. It's the whole notion of, you know, he's a beloved actor and he's the key to this franchise. And the Indiana Jones films are renowned for, we go to India, we go to, we go to exotic ports of call. And yes, you can do some of the stuff in green screen, but you also, for them to be legitimate adventure films, you have to travel the world. And I again, that's just what's kind of interesting when you talk with folks at Disney. It's like, yes, we have that release date, and yes, it hasn't shifted, but there is a lot of talk about, are we going to get beaten up because we take our 80-year-old star around the world and put him at risk
Well,
because
when did Crystal Skull come out? Was that 2008?
oof,
Is it
maybe
2008?
2007. Yeah, yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
it's
that was a while.
shame on them. I mean, it should not take creative, intelligent people, this long to come up with a script. I mean, how many scripts have they redone? And I feel like, I don't know, it's a little frustrating because this is something we want. You're this is obviously his swan song. He's been wanting to do it forever and ever. And
Mhm.
I just think it's really unfortunate and almost embarrassing that they haven't made it a priority.
Well, now, just to be clear here, again, in fact, little cross promotion here. I want to say Drew on his Light the Fuse podcast is interviewing David Cope, the
Yeah,
gentleman who you know wrote the screenplay for a couple of the Mission Impossible films, but also
Crystal Skull.
was working on Indy 5, and he talked about how it was a very amicable break. In regard to him walking away from the project, but it just at the same time it was trying to come up with a story that pleased Steven, that worked for Harrison, that George had some input on, and this was a hard Venn diagram to get work. Coupled with the fact that the feeling was that this was going to be the last time that Harrison was going to play this character, and so you wanted to send him out, uh, you know, you know, as big as possible, and it just it they could never come up with a script that serviced everyone, and the fact that in the end Spielberg stepped away, you know and it's been insinuated that Steven just felt like at that point he wasn't helping, he was hindering, and it's just like maybe I need to step away here,
And it was
and
2008, by the way.
there we go. Okay, so but anyway, to get back to the Star Wars theatrical release, I think Dan, you're right that the belief at Disney right now is that this just all plays into our favor. That it's a situation where we'll have all this stuff on Disney Plus, the limited series, keeping people engaged and enjoying Star Wars, and in regard to a theatrical film, absent makes the heart grow fonder. And plus, it gives them time to find the very best idea, the strongest self-contained story. And there's a number of teams right now that are working at Lucasfilm, you know, on that exact project, and are the different sets of directors and writers. Um, long story short, the next Star Wars theatrical film has to be another Force Awakens, a real event. That you have to want to go back to theaters to see this thing on a big screen. And that, let's face it, especially given people's concerns about right now about safety going to movie theaters, it's got to be a hell of a movie to get you back there. So, and speaking of the, we were just talking Force Awakens, which brings us to the last Star Wars trilogy. Did you see the story that's come out of Pablo's new book, the Star Wars Fascinating Facts about Episode 8?
No.
Well, face it, everyone kind of beats up on that installment of the series, for a lot of the ideas that Ryan put out there. And little spoiler here, folks, if you haven't seen it already, but Luke dies in that movie, and a lot of the Star Wars fandom beat up Ryan for doing that, but it turns out that Pablo, in fact, this is on page 140 of that book, with the headline "Luke Skywalker's Destiny," and the fascinating fact that Hidalgo shares on this page of the book is years before The Last Jedi began development, the treatment left behind by George Lucas in 2012 also had Episode 8. That was going to be the one where Luke Skywalker would die. So,
Makes sense.
you
That's
know,
the Joseph Campbell pattern of the mentor. And
well, no,
that's how it works. That's how stories work.
oh no. I mean, again, you're right about the classic structure, but what's kind of interesting is that Timothy Zahn, who's written the Thrawn books, he
That's
was
right.
one of the only people to get to see that outline that George prepped in 2012. And he talked about, look, the original idea, and and he said, you have to understand, George changes his mind, so it may not be what he's thinking of right now, But the idea was that the trilogies, the 9 films in total, were going to be about 3 generations. So you'd have the original trilogy, and then with the prequels, you go back to Luke's father, and you find out what happened to him. And then for films 7, 8, and 9, it was supposed to be about Luke's children, or the equivalent. And so he talked about how, I guess, the original outline that Lucas brought to Disney was built around a teenage female young Jedi Padawan character called Kira. And I guess she was described in the outline as a loner, hothead, gear-headed badass. And the interesting thing is, supposedly, this was the stepping off point, eventually refined and rewritten for Rey. But let's see, Kira was supposed to have a friend, a teenager called Sam, who carried a blaster, and this was supposedly the stepping off point for Finn. But had you heard anything about that? About the
This is all brand new to me. I had not heard any of this.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Because face it, George. George did have a fondness for teenage characters. Well, again, we were just talking about Crystal Skull and how Mutt is portrayed in that. And as long as we're talking about Indiana Jones, tell you what, folks, when Dan and I get back from this break, we're going to talk about the Young Indiana Jones and the Adventure Stunt Show, the worst name for a proposed attraction in the history of Disney.
Rain-X wipers are the #1 wiper blades in America. That means all kinds of drivers choose Rain-X. Big drivers in small cars choose Rain-X. Small drivers in big cars choose Rain-X. Drivers with long hair and short commutes choose Rain-X. Drivers with short hair and long commutes choose Rain-X. Drivers with pets on board, babies on board, and bored babies on board choose Rain-X. Basically, drivers who love a clear view of the road all choose Rain-X wipers, the #1 wiper blades in America.
What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Okay, we're back. And I apologize, folks. It's October, and I wanted, Dan and I are recording this in the middle of the month, but people are kind of thinking about Halloween now, and I wanted to do something Halloween-y. And I spent a good amount of time this past week working on maybe doing something about the Rancor.
Rancor?
The Rancor.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how much you know about, when they were working on Jedi, the first pass on the Rancor, it was a guy in a suit.
That's right.
Yeah. And they, and evidently the idea was that, that this creature that was supposed to be 14 feet tall and weigh over 3,500 pounds, they could never get it to work the way they wanted as a suit. It just it still looked like a guy in a suit. So they paused production, and they eventually reimagined it as sort of a rod operated pirate, or puppet, not pirate. But well, there you go. But the thing is, they filmed it quickly at high frame rate, and then slowed it down. And the weird thing is, by doing that gave the impression that it was far larger, far heavier. So that's how they got the character. But again, it was one of these things. I was doing a deep dive on it, and it didn't get what I was looking for, for a Halloween type show. And then it occurred to me, it's like, geez, just go with the hearse outside of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, which by the way is still closed, folks. You know that Governor Newsom is supposedly sending some representatives from the state of California to Florida to go to Disney World.
I saw that to get like their own bird's eye view to just sort of see, to actually see with their own eyes that it's actually working.
Yeah. So and Disneyland in the last week or so has also issued some additional safety and health protocols. So they're still hoping they can get it open by November. But I don't know if you saw, Dan, that to sort of placate the Star Wars fans who can't get into Galaxy's Edge and haven't been able to get in for months, they actually took the Wonderground gallery space there and turned it into a Black Spire outpost, trading outpost. A lot of the stuff from the bazaar is now available, out there at downtown Disney Anaheim.
And Shop Disney on occasion will have stuff from Galaxy's Edge, including some of the legacy lightsabers and Anakin and Obi-Wan's Jedi robes, and there's some really nice stuff there.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm kind of intrigued by the fact that you can supposedly get kyber crystals at this store. So you could, and likewise holocrons.
I'm kind of mixed on that because I like the notion that you can only get it on Batuu, and I understand it's about revenue is obviously an important part of telling the story. But I don't know, does it take away from the novelty? I mean, if you're holding a kyber crystal at your home, you're still going to love it, but it's sort of a mixed blessing, I guess.
It is. So, but again, the hard reality is that again, that this whole park, and by that, a Batuu as well, has been closed since the middle of March. And the whole notion of we want to service that fandom and we want to give them a way to, if they want things from that space, a Lothcat or the like, they can come here. But anyway, to get back to the hearse out in front of the Haunted Mansion, that was actually purchased. That it was supposed to be a prop. And again, the Young Indiana Jones and the Adventures Spectacular Stunt Show. By the way, Dan, Disney does this all the time, that when they're developing a ride, they will start to buy props before, that they've actually, in some cases, before they've got the official green light. Because sometimes what they'll do is that, for example, they'll prop a conference room when they're bringing in the board to sign off on a project. And so, for example, you'll walk in and it's like, oh, room themed like the Haunted Mansion. Yes, we're looking to improve the Haunted Mansion, and these are, some of the effects we'll be doing or trying to do, and we're hoping you can get behind that. So, in fact, I still remember, there was the Disney World cast member who sent me all of the photos for the props they bought for the presentation for Disney's Night Kingdom. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
Yeah, it was going to be a mini park. In a weird sort of way, it was Disney's answer to Discovery Cove at SeaWorld. But the idea was that it was a park that would only open after dark, 1,500 people, and you could do things like zip line over, through bat-filled caves, or you could go out with night vision goggles and watch, in fact, it was going to have this animal collection component. And the weird part of it is during the day, they were going to use this facility for, conventions that, corporate groups that would come to town. This would be where, you would go to do your trust building exercises with your team. It's just sort of like, we're all going to go climb the rock wall and hope the alligator doesn't eat us. But yeah, that they bought the props, and in the end, it was actually the financial collapse in 2008 that killed the project. But yeah, it was supposed to be sort of a fifth alternative, for people who are going who've been to Walt Disney World multiple times and were looking for special things to do. And nowadays, Disney doesn't do that. That they won't build something that doesn't have an IP around it, which is again how we got the Galactic Star Cruiser.
That's right.
So
Anyway,
anyway,
what's the latest on that, by the way?
they are, I was poking, in fact, again, putting on my Disney dish hat because Len and I'll be recording tomorrow. Trying to get some more information about opening dates. And more to the point, I think you and I have talked in the past about the fact that this isn't a hotel you just throw open. You have to do, they I want to say they plan no less than two entire different sets of play tests with Disney cast members who were going to sign, non-disclosure agreements out the wazoo. But the idea was that they would do the quote unquote 2-day cruise on the Halcyon, and then Disney would do debriefs on all these folks, and then some 3 weeks later they put the next group in, and same thing. They do a 2-day long cruise, and then they debrief everybody, and it would only then once they've been able to do this, with everybody, non-disclosured up, so nobody can talk about what the experience is like, and they can then figure out, okay, that worked, that didn't, let's adjust that, and then like 2 months after that, the very first, group would be able to go in. But construction is continuing. Um, it just, there's a certain level of frustration because it's just sort of like, when are we, this was supposed to be part of the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. And now, everything that was supposed to be part of the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World has gone sideways. The timetable for everything. And so the whole notion is, well, do we wait to, do we push the opening of this to 2022? Because that seems to be where everybody seems to think the safe harbor is now. Because face it, you have to have people who feel confident to be able to get on a plane
Right.
to travel down to Orlando. And also, that one of the things Disney's most concerned about with this is that the Halcyon is kind of a ship in a bottle. I mean, you can't, once you come through the front door of the hotel and you take the shuttle back up to, that they have that sort of simulator experience that supposedly takes you from the planet, the surface of Earth up until, to where the Halcyon is getting ready to make its way to Batu. The idea is you can't leave the ship unless, the only way you can leave the ship is you go over to Blackspire Outpost. And then if you want to further journey out, step away from your itinerary, you have to do it by way of heading out through Disney's Hollywood Studios. And, I guess there have been some discussions lately about the fact that we are asking people to stay inside of one hotel in the middle of a pandemic. And
not a great idea.
And the whole notion is that, I don't know if you've managed to see the blueprints yet, but even the blueprints that are out there for the Halcyon show, for example, the outdoor access, they put in the equivalent of buffer rooms, so there will be no light bleed. Face it, you're supposed to be, orbiting a planet, looking down, and the notion of, wow, I'm on a spaceship, and then somebody opens an outside door, and here comes, the light in from Central Florida. It's like, no, they can't do that. So that there are these doors within doors systems set up so that there will be no light bleed. But it gets a little difficult with a pandemic, convincing people that no, you need to stay here. You need to stay in the bar space. You need, which we've created to be intimate because, you want an intimate Star Wars experience. It's
I'm really looking forward to it, and I can't wait to actually get to experience that and how surreal it's going to be. Hopefully, I can take my family. But yeah, you got to do it. I want everything to work well, and if you're going to spend, I mean, let's face it, it's a very expensive experience.
It
so
is.
when you do it, you want to be able to experience it the way that they have intended, and that may be in like 2022 or later, like you said.
Yeah, and
it just gives you more time to save your money.
Yeah. Okay. Good. See, this is why I like working with Disney. You can always find the positive. I'm the flinty New Englander. I tend to see the glass as half empty, and hey, there's a crack in it, and what's that dirt at the bottom? So anyway, okay. Getting back to the Young Indiana Jones and the Adventure Spectacular. Two inspirations for it. Obviously, one was the overwhelming success of the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, which had opened at Disney MGM back in August of '89. Plus, that same summer was when Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade came out, and that in fact May of that year. Anyway, the guys at Disney, they see The Last Crusade, especially the scenes at the beginning with young Indiana Jones, played by River Phoenix. And they see him scrambling across the roof of that moving circus train as he's trying to escape from those Tomb Raiders. And they suddenly realize they now have a way to bring a huge show like the MGM's Epic Stunt Spectacular to Disneyland. And more to the point, they have a piece of property that would be ideal for this. For more than a decade, WDI had been looking for something to place in this huge piece of property that they had at Disneyland out behind Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. In fact, this is where, I don't know if you know the Disney project Discovery Bay, where they were sort of a tribute to Jules Verne. But, in each case, when Disney proposed something to build there, the executives could, it's the last piece of open real estate at Disneyland. And more to the point, every time somebody came to with an idea, it was going to be this huge expense. And it's like, I can't roll the dice unless I know, this is going to be a smash. But this, on the other hand, this is Indiana Jones. This is a character that's at that point had starred in 3 highly successful films. More to the point, they could literally show them the opening scene of Last Crusade with the train, traveling through the American West in 1912. And it's just sort of like, and here's Disneyland with a huge chunk of space between Frontierland and Fantasyland, which coincidentally a steam train, ran through every day, multiple times. And so it was almost too good to be true. It almost seemed preordained. So very quickly, the idea for the Young Indiana Jones and the Adventure Stunt Spectacular came together. And irony, Dan, is right now, we're, Disneyland's version of Galaxy's Edge open. People are walking today where the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular was supposed to be built. Pretty much where you enter at the top of Big Thunder Trail up by Fantasyland. You are now basically on the stage at where the Young Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular was going to be built, or they were going to set up grandstands for 5,000 guests.
Wow.
And it was going to be, you'd enter through this circus midway. And what was kind of cool, you got inside the tent, and it's a giant red circus tent, or red and white striped circus tent. And what was kind of interesting about this is, as you sat there waiting for the show to begin, you noticed, wait a minute, those are train tracks at the back of the tent. The train's going to come through the tent. And yeah, this was actually one part of the show that at one key moment in the show, they were going to recreate the scene from The Last Crusade, where young Indy is scrambling across the circus train, and God. But the other thing, what's interesting about this is, unlike what they did at MGM, where it was they were pretending to shoot scenes from Raiders, and made a very big deal about, okay, here's our fake camera crew, and let's practice the stunt before we do it. The Young Indiana Jones show was going to be done in one continuous shot. It was going to be a 20-minute long play, featuring Indy, and the framework, Dan, was a little weird. It was actually supposed to start off with the older Indiana Jones, stepping out into the empty circus ring and sort of reminiscing, about, oh, this adventure, I remember this. And then as he's talking, circus performers would come in and the show would then begin. And then the way it ended was equally strange, because you were going to be able to see a chunk of the berm of Disneyland. And the way the show was going to end is now, young Indiana Jones is standing on stage in pretty much the same position where we saw the old Indiana Jones. And now Indy comes riding in on a black horse. He basically puts an arm, old Indy, he puts an arm out, grabbing the young Indy, pulls him up onto the horse, and the two of them ride up over the berm. The horse rears back, and with the John Williams theme thundering, and they then disappear from sight. And again, hugely elaborate. Think of the Disney MGM show. That level of effects, that elaborate set, that big a crew. But on the other hand, there were Imagineers who were working on a parallel Indiana Jones project. And their argument was like, look, this was 5 minutes of, the last movie. On the other hand, if we take a look at Temple of Doom, and, that whole scene inside of the mine where people are riding in the mine cars, that's a ride. That was, and people come to Disneyland to go on rides. And in fact, not to put too fine a point on it, but one of the reasons that they really wanted to do the minecart ride at Disneyland is that when Ben Burtt was putting together the soundscape for Temple of Doom, he actually came to Disneyland, and one night after the park closed, he walked around with his sound equipment and recorded. They let him inside of Space Mountain. They let him inside of Big Thunder, and he recorded the noise that roller coaster tracks make, when cars are going by, and it actually incorporated a lot of that into the soundscape for Temple of Doom. But anyway, in the end, when it came to sort of push came to shove, they decided at Disneyland, it makes more sense to go with a ride than a stunt show. We've already done the stunt show in Florida. Let's double down on this runaway mine train idea, which eventually mutated into the troop carriers, which got us the Indiana Jones Adventure, which opened at that park in March of '95. On the other hand, George at this point had been meeting regularly with Disney and had really enjoyed all of the work that had been done on this teenage version of Indiana Jones. In fact, that was the thing. They kind of aged him up a little bit from the River Phoenix character, because the notion was, okay, we're going to have to pay a professional stunt person and need to be at least 18 years old, so, for employment purposes, he can't be, a tenderfoot, a 12 or 15-year-old boy. But anyway, George had been working on this, enjoying working with Disney on this teenage version of Indiana Jones, so much so that when the project got abandoned, George just turned and took all of the notes, and that's how we ended up with the Young Indiana Jones Chronicle, the TV series that ran on ABC from March of 1992 through July of 1993. But again, I guess, and again, if you think about the fact that, if we pivot now back to the work that George did on his version of the last trilogy, and the notion that, I want, I want our now older version of Luke Skywalker dealing with teenagers. Just, again, it's just fascinating for me that George keeps circling back on all these sorts of ideas. So, anyway, speaking of circling back, every show we talk about what you're up to with Coffee with Kenobi. It's, I've noticed was following on Twitter that your Patreon group, hey, you're poaching on my turf now when you're talking, or my and Drew's turf when you're talking about the 5 favorite Disney animated films.
Yeah, we on our Patreon show CWK Pour Over, we selected our top 10 favorite Disney animated movies.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't including Pixar in that; it'll be a separate list. But yeah, our top 5s and top 10s are getting a lot of attention, and people really like them. So it's just kind of fun to flex my non-Star Wars side of things and look at it that way. And I did think about you guys when I was making it, actually, because that'd be fun for you guys to do something like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, how did it shake out? Was it mostly stuff from the first Golden Age or the second Golden Age?
It's kind of a smattering of both. We've only revealed 6 through 10 so far, but there's been a lot of stuff over the past 10 years that people have been bringing up, which I found really surprising. My number one film, I won't reveal it yet until everybody listens to it next week, but my number one film is a more recent one.
Okay. All right. I'm definitely going to have to listen to this. What about really for real Coffee with Kenobi? What have we been doing there?
We looked at Star Wars Squadrons, the recent video game. We talked about Star Wars and how it lends itself to haunted houses, which is a really fun conversation this week. And then we're going to do a couple of weeks talking about the Star Wars books and behind the scenes of the creation of it, and hopefully talking with some other individuals who have written the book alongside me.
Ooh, okay. All right. Those sound like great shows. Can't wait to see that. All right. Here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, we've got, like I said, we're going to be doing a brand new Disney Dish with Len tomorrow. In fact, I think we're going to be talking about the wonders of life pavilion at Epcot. Let's see, Mr. Taylor and I will be doing a brand new fine tuning. We're getting down to where we can be talking about Glenn Keane's new movie, his solo project Over the Moon. Likewise, Josh Gad has a brand new project coming up from Disney called Once Upon a Snowman. That'll I think we'll be talking about that as well. But at the same time, we've got Aaron Adams and I do the Marvelous Disney show, and a lot of Marvel news breaking. Also, they're going to be impacted by this reorg as much as the folks at Lucasfilm are. Universal Joint, Dustin Fuse and I will be recording a brand new show this weekend about the Universal parks, and we finally got a brand new I Want That Out the Door with the Shelley Viodo lead. So that was fun, and we'll get a new one of those going in 2 weeks. Tell you what, Dan, again, I so enjoyed, first of all, the wonderful photo of you with your, early copy of the Star Wars book, which again, on sale October 20th, folks. And likewise, again, seriously, so enjoyed the jacket photo, but it was just sort of like, wow, okay, and he cleans up nice. But if folks want to also keep tabs on what you're up to on Twitter, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Zehr, MRZEHR, and you can find Coffee with Kenobi all over social media.
Okay. Now, Nancy wants me to remind you that you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Jim Hill Media and on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. Okay, folks, one final thing before we go. If you could do Dan and I a favor, if you could head over to iTunes and not only rate and recommend looking at Lucasfilm, but also Coffee with Kenobi, that would be incredibly helpful. And if you really, really, really like what you heard here tonight, head over to Bandcamp and subscribe. And I think that's going to do it for tonight, and which is a good thing because Mr. Z had places to go. So we'll let him go, and we'll be back here soon. So till then, folks, take care.